Hey guys, what's up? Tyler here, and welcome to another episode of Alien Biology. So, Star Trek as a franchise is quite interesting when it comes to its approach to depicting alien creatures. There's plenty of bizarre and exotic forms that we see throughout the series, but most of the aliens that we see are humanoid in appearance for obvious reasons. Furthermore, many of the humanoid races appear to be humans with nothing but nose or forehead ridges, but a lot of the aliens that have ample screen time have a much more creative design. And the Cardassians, I think, are a perfect example of this. The Cardassians, first introduced in the Next Generation, are heavily featured in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Their government, the Cardassian Union, had just occupied Bajor for decades at the start of DS9's run, and they left a very messy political situation, to say the least. But while their society, culture, and politics are very interesting in and of themselves, today I want to focus on the Cardassians' biology, and answer some questions that I and other people have had about this unique race. So without further ado, this is Star Trek Alien Biology, the Cardassians. Like many of the other humanoid races in the Star Trek galaxy, the Cardassians are suggested to have descended from an ancient genetic code seeded by humanoid progenitors 4.5 billion years ago. They're characterized primarily by their light gray skin, two thick vertical neck ridges that recede back to the crown of their head, and a roughly teardrop-shaped ridge in the center of their forehead. Their facial ridges are thickest right above the eyes, resulting in a deep-set appearance and being somewhat reminiscent of some of our ancient hominid cousins. Female Cardassians generally have softer ridges, as well as a blue coloration in their forehead teardrop, an example of sexual dimorphism. Cardassians generally have straight black hair that grays with age, and their blood is red in color, presumably utilizing iron-based hemoglobin. They also have hearing that is less acute than humans. Unlike some other races, such as the Vulcans, Andorians, Tellarites, Orions, we don't know exactly which real-world star serves as an analog to the Cardassian sun. But according to Star Trek star charts, Cardassia orbits a giant orange star, absolute magnitude of -1.1, or 100 times brighter than Sol. Cardassia Prime, which is what Cardassians call their homeworld, is also the second planet in an 8-planet system. It should be noted, of course, that star charts erroneously depicts Cardassia Prime as being the 6th planet of the system, so the star's absolute magnitude may also be called into question. Because of its relative closeness to its parent star and the sun's relative brightness, it's no wonder that the Cardassians enjoy warmer temperatures than many other humanoid species. As I mentioned in my alien biology video about the Asari from Mass Effect, a planet that orbits the star that outputs redder wavelengths would have vegetation that is darker and browner in color. And in fact, Cardassia Prime actually delivers on this front. Images of Cardassia Prime depict vegetation that is in fact darker and browner, albeit with a slight green tinge. And of course on the surface, this brown color palette is also replicated in their architecture, and their sky is a bright red orange. What does all of this have to do with Cardassian physiology? Well, as you can imagine, a species' environment has a huge impact on its biology. It's one of the foundational principles of Darwinian natural selection. We are told in various episodes of Deep Space Nine that Cardassians do prefer darker, warmer, and more humid environments compared to humans, which has contributed to one of the biggest debates surrounding this species, in my experience. Are the Cardassians mammals or reptiles? It's a very loaded question. The short answer is no, neither. While there are a lot of recognizably mammalian and reptilian species in Star Trek, not every alien on every planet is going to fit in those neat classifications. Really, the Cardassians are best described as just aliens. But the long answer is more complicated. The connection between Cardassians and reptiles has been noted many a time, not only by fans, but also production staff. Michael Westmore, the makeup supervisor on Star Trek Deep Space Nine and several of the other spin-off series, referred to Gul Oset's makeup as akin to a scaly reptilian-type armor skin. The Cardassians' preference for warmer temperatures is also a reptilian trait, as reptiles are cold-blooded. Andrew Robinson, who played Elam Garrick on DS9, has made several references to Cardassian neuropsychology and likened their brains to the reptilian portion of mammalian brains. It's this reptilian brain that gives them, in his estimation, their sense of boundaries, their strict code of justice, and their suspicious and aggressive nature. Cardassian society is organized in a way that values law and order over freedom and equality, and consequently their government, a military dictatorship, holds Orwellian control over its population. It should be noted, though, that this wasn't always the case. There are plenty of references to a Cardassia that used to be more peaceful and democratic, when art and culture flourished before authoritarianism, likely a response to resource shortages set in. To be clear, this reptilian brain hypothesis regarding mammalian development is no longer considered to be valid in many scientific circles. The original hypothesis, developed in the early 1960s by Dr. Paul MacLean and popularized by Carl Sagan's 1977 book, The Dragons of Eden, is called the triune brain hypothesis. It describes a model of the brain that involves three complexes: the reptilian complex, or the basal ganglia, the paleo-mammalian complex, or the limbic system, and the neo-mammalian complex, or the neocortex. The basal ganglia, situated in the forebrain, are strongly associated with voluntary motor controls, procedural and habitual learning, eye movement, cognition, and emotion. MacLean argued that these traits were dominant in the brains of reptiles and birds, and that the reptilian complex was responsible for instinctual behaviors such as aggression, dominance, territoriality, and ritual displays. All this is well and good. But seemingly reptilian traits do not necessarily a reptilian species make. That said, Memory Beta, the canon for licensed non-canon works of Star Trek such as novels, games, and comics, does refer to the Cardassians as quasi-reptilian, and includes them in the category reptilian races and cultures. But while this is true, the Cardassians do clearly possess some traits that are more associated with mammals than reptiles. Cardassian women have breasts for obvious reasons, and while the Cardassians' ridges do resemble scales somewhat, their skin overall is more like human skin than reptilian skin, despite the difference in coloration. Additionally, while their behaviors would seem to suggest that they may be cold-blooded, this is never explicitly said to be the case. It's possible that Cardassians do regulate their body temperature and simply have a different threshold for how hot or cold their bodies can get. So what's the answer? Well, there is one hypothesis that does make sense to me. The Cardassians might have evolved from an ancestor that, like them, possessed both mammalian and reptilian characteristics. There are actually some animals in Earth history that follow this description as well. Logically, the common ancestor of mammals and reptiles would have shared traits of both. Early synapsids, a clade of amniote tetrapods, used to be referred to as mammal-like reptiles, although this terminology is now considered outdated as our understanding of mammalian evolution has advanced. Technically, synapsids include modern mammals, such as humans. The therapsids were a group of synapsids that evolved about 275 million years ago, distinct from reptiles. Therapsids include all mammals and their ancestors, which bodes well for our investigation. One of their defining characteristics is the orientation of their limbs beneath the body, as opposed to beside the body, which is the configuration seen in reptiles such as lizards and crocodiles. Therapsids also include the clade Cynodontia, which first appeared in the late Permian period and gave rise to the mammalian lineage about 225 million years ago. There was a non-mammalian lineage of cynodonts, Tritolodontidae, that went extinct about 113 million years ago, although these animals were characterized mainly by the shape of their teeth and their herbivorous diets, traits that are explicitly not shared by the Cardassians. As a matter of fact, there really is no singular last common ancestor of mammals and reptiles in the fossil record. Most species that have lived throughout history don't even leave fossils, and the ones that do can only give paleontologists so much information to work with. This is why this is a field that has been evolving, pardon the pun, for centuries. With this in mind, the closest Earth animals that I can come up with as an analog to a hypothetical ancestor of the Cardassians would be something like Biomarsuchia, early non-mammalian synapsids that had bony protrusions on their foreheads. Sound familiar? These animals evolved from pelycosaurs, a group of so-called mammal-like reptiles that used to form their own order but were later reclassified. Pelycosaurs include the infamous Dimetrodon, which is a recognizable animal of the Permian period. It's unclear if the Cardassians' ancestors ever had full body hair or if their head hair is a more recent development. Whatever the case, it's likely that the Cardassians' ancestors have always been some form of predator, with this and other reptilian traits described by Westmore and Robinson and others being passed down through generations and forming the basis of Cardassian physiology. In addition, alongside these reptilian traits, the Cardassians have clearly evolved certain mammalian characteristics as well, including the fact that they reproduce via placental viviparity, meaning they give live birth. Viviparity is a trait that is common in mammals, but is also technically shared by some other non-mammalian animals, such as whale sharks. So what's my verdict? Well, again, aside from the more accurate description of Cardassians as simply just being aliens with no direct analog to any Earth animals, the best I can come up with is that they are in fact mammal-like reptiles, hybrids of sorts, and their ancestors would resemble some of the more awkward-looking middle stages of mammalian evolution between the Permian reptiles that predated the dinosaurs and the shrew-like beings that gave rise to the line that led to us today. Life has a very interesting way, it seems, of developing into all kinds of veritable forms that are uniquely adapted to their environments, and it seems that on Cardassia, these early synapsid-like predators won out. Before we end this video, I actually want to talk about one other hypothesis regarding Cardassian evolution that could turn everything we just went through on its head. The Cardassians' relationship with the more human-looking Bajorans may go even deeper than just being an occupying force. Some believe that the Cardassians and the Bajorans are actually the same species. What evidence is there for this theory? Well, Cardassians and Bajorans are two of the only known species in the local galaxy who are capable of reproducing without medical intervention. Even Vulcan-human hybrids require some sort of genetic manipulation to help them survive. Furthermore, the Bajorans are known to have been capable of faster-than-light travel since the 16th century, which predates the Cardassians' current wave of expansion. A Bajoran solar sail actually reached Cardassia 5 light years away around this time, meaning first contact predated the occupation by about 700 years. Some have made the connection between the Bajorans and the Habitians, the first civilization to flourish on Cardassia 10,000 years ago, and whose artifacts are often uncovered in archaeological expeditions. The Habitians were incredibly sophisticated. They were very spiritual and also possessed solar technology not unlike the Bajorans. According to the DS9 novel Avatar, artifacts made of Jevonite, a rare mineral on Cardassia, have been excavated on Bajor and been proven by quantum dating to predate the Habitians on Cardassia. At some point after a major climate disaster, the Habitians were wiped out by more militant members of their race. What if the Habitians were actually Bajoran colonists, and modern Cardassians are Bajorans who genetically engineered themselves to be better adapted to Cardassia's warmer environment? It's a wild theory, one that has plenty of holes, but the close biological connection between the Bajorans and the Cardassians can't be ignored, in my opinion. I don't personally subscribe to this theory, though, because I think that we need more than just circumstantial evidence to make it more plausible, but it is interesting to consider, and hey, maybe it could be true. It would be a nice plot twist regarding the power dynamics between the Bajorans and the Cardassians, proving that the former may have always been more advanced, just like the Baul on Kaminar used to be the prey species before they enslaved the Kelpians. All in all, Cardassians have an evolutionary history that is quite unique among some of the other races featured on screen in Star Trek. Not quite mammalian, not quite reptilian, but resembling something in between. In conducting the research for this video, particularly their resemblance to early synapsids, taught me a lot about evolution here on Earth. Thank you all so much for watching. I really look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments about the information I've presented in this video. I appreciate everybody who expressed interest in this topic when it was suggested. If you want to help decide one of the next species to be featured in this alien biology series, then you can participate in the monthly polls on my community tab. If you like this video, be sure to leave a thumbs up and don't forget to share it. That stuff really helps me out. And of course, if you haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Be sure to do that. Hit that subscribe button. Also click the bell icon to receive all notifications so you won't miss future uploads, posts, etc. Finally, you can support my work further by becoming a YouTube member or a patron on Patreon. Links to those, as well as my merch store and my social media, are in the description below. That's about all I have for today. Thank you all so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video. live long and prosper.